You know, if you had the misfortune of living in 17th century colonial Massachusetts, it would not have taken much for you to be labeled a witch. Those suspected of witchcraft and executed for it didn't need to be seen flying through the air on a broom. Some were burned simply for associating with others who were suspected of being witches. Some for having certain physical traits thought to be marks of witchery. Your age, your gender, your social class, your family, all of these were thought to be passive clues, potentially indicating that you are a witch, or possibly a witch, or witch adjacent. Now, we would like to think that things are different now in our enlightened times. But humans are humans, and the witch trials were born from the very human tendency to invent new enemies in our heads and then to suddenly find them everywhere we turn. We have many such boogeymen in our culture. They're more likely to be punished with mockery and alienation rather than incineration, but as we've seen, the latter option, incineration, hasn't been taken off the table entirely, especially recently. The actor Chris Pratt has experienced all of this week, and not for the first time, experiencing the wrath of the modern witch hunters. His suspected crime being a Christian, a conservative, and worst of all, a Trump voter. Now, while Pratt is a professed Christian and does seem to perhaps be more politically conservative than the average Hollywood celebrity, which is sort of like calling him cleaner than the average dumpster cat, there's no reason to actually think that Chris Pratt supports Trump. There's even less reason to care if he does or doesn't. But the witch hunters on the left cannot tolerate dissent, even theoretically, and especially not from someone in a profession or demographic group of which they have claimed ownership. And that is why Pratt has been trending on social media all week, for days now. Not because leftists are outraged by things that he has said or beliefs he has professed, which would be bad enough if that were the reason, but because of their suspicions about beliefs he might hold. As Twitter describes it, you can see there here on their trending section, the Chris Pratt controversy that has sparked over 260,000 tweets is focused on, quote, his alleged political and religious beliefs. Now, this seems to have started with news that some Avenger actors are taking part in a Joe Biden virtual fundraiser cringily titled Voters Assemble. Marvel luminaries like Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Zoe Saldana, all volunteered for the noble cause, but a few actors were missing from the Biden fundraiser roster, and this fact became cause for great concern. Now, it was apparently decided that some of the missing superheroes should be given an excused absence because they're not from this country, like the guy who plays Spider-Man. Spider-Man's off the hook, but Chris Pratt has no such alibi. And this raised suspicion. As an article in the AV Club put it, quote, the fundraiser will feature a trivia game and Q&A, which we hope will at least be partially dedicated to asking about every single member of the Avengers who isn't there. A good number of them aren't from the US, so we can't expect them to clean up our mess in this dumb country. But this is the second one of these Biden fundraiser reunion things that Chris Pratt has missed out on. We theorized last time that he's either a Republican or just wants everyone to get along and can't endorse anyone since he's all buff and churchy now. But we'll have to wait and see what happens if the Biden campaign organizes an Everwood reunion. From there, it was off to the races, with great numbers of people attacking Chris Pratt for what they assume his political views probably are. And the circumstantial evidence that Pratt secretly wears MAGA hats in his spare time goes beyond his absence at a Biden fundraiser. We should note he also attends, according to leftist critics, including fellow actor Ellen Page, an anti-LGBT church. So that's a red flag. Plus, as Vanity Fair points out, quote, Pratt's personal life has also led to speculation about his politics. Last year, Pratt married Catherine Schwarzenegger, daughter of Arnold Schwarzenegger, a longtime Republican. Though the article points out that Catherine publicly supports Biden. So at least someone in the Pratt household isn't a white supremacist. That's good. Other media outlets have weighed in. Now, listen to this. Newsweek ran a fact check analyzing the claims that Pratt is, quote, allegedly a Republican and Trump supporter. The article sifts through all the clues, looking at all the different evidence, eventually landing on the verdict of unknown. Newsweek says, we cannot verify if Pratt is a Trump supporter because he hasn't confirmed it. The Hollywood actor has not shown any support publicly for the president or his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden. But unknown isn't good enough, especially when Pratt, as some on Twitter have pointed out, follows notorious Nazis like Ben Shapiro and Dan Crenshaw. If Pratt wants to absolve himself of his assumed thought crimes, he has to come out and publicly support Biden and denounce Trump. Anything less will be insufficient. Now, to their credit, many of Pratt's castmates have come to his defense against the slobbering, mindless hordes, but they've come in for harsh criticism because of that, especially Zoe Saldana, who was attacked with racial slurs by the racially tolerant left. One person calling her a nasty biracial woman, another saying they're, quote, tired of defending your cracker-loving ass, adding, of course, shut up, along with many other comments that I just can't read out loud. All of this, again, it cannot be emphasized enough, merely because of political views that the man might hold. So gone are the days when people can be viciously attacked for the opinions they express. Well, those days are still here. But we're now living in a time when you could be attacked for opinions you did not express. Silence is violence, as the slogan goes, and the people who say that really mean it. Now, I don't say this just because I'm a conservative. It really is true that only one side of the ideological divide behaves this way. And that's at least partially a reflection of just how dominant and mainstream leftism is. It still positions itself, of course, as the counterculture, but it isn't. It is the culture. And now, having won every major battle and seized nearly all of the cultural power, it can concern itself with issues like Chris Pratt's theoretical political leanings. Only the dominant culture and the dominant cultural narrative can demand allegiance to this extent. Counterculture movements aren't usually the ones conducting witch hunts. And this is what makes all the talk about resistance from the left so absurd. What are you resisting? What is the resistance resisting? You own everything. Just this week, Sony became the latest of dozens and dozens of billion-dollar corporations to endorse Black Lives Matter. And this only a few days after it was announced that one of the Marxist co-founders of BLM has inked a major deal with Warner Brothers. What type of counterculture movement has billion-dollar sponsors and contracts with major Hollywood studios? A fraudulent one. That's what type. The left dresses up in costumes, the costume of outsiders and radicals, and complains about alleged oppression, and then they charge out into the street to fight enemies they've already defeated and monsters that don't exist. So instead, they burn down a CVS, steal a few armloads of shoes, call it a day, go home, tweet about why a Marvel actor is persecuting them by not saying anything at all. This is the behavior of the comfortable, the victorious, and the bored. And that's what leftism is. But what it is not, certainly, most of all, is counterculture. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.